Okay, well, mine is switched on. But at any rate, so this is Howard Walensky for Skype, speaking with Tim Bacon. And Tim, you're the coach for the squash team at Smith College in
Right.
Northampton, Mass., right?
Correct. Yeah.
So what happened to you?
Yeah. Um, well, we had hip replacement scheduled. I guess I scheduled it in the summer, and unfortunately, it fell right in, about 4 or 5, 6 weeks into our season. And the college hired a replacement, Erin Robson, who actually I've worked with before, and she's great. But this one tournament we were having is an individual flight tournament, so all the players in our program could enter, which would mean 13 players, all playing 3 or 4 times on one day. So that's in the order of 40 to 50 matches, and obviously um, the matches are going on 4 courts at once. So it's a lot of matches to supervise for one person. So I asked one of my players just to take her laptop down to the courts and to open up Skype, to place her laptop behind their glassback courts so you can see through them, to place her laptop behind the court on a bench so I could see the action. And then that gave my players the option of, in squash, you play a 3 out of 5 games in a match, and you're allowed 90 seconds rest in between each game. So that gave my players the option of coming out, approaching the laptop, and talking to me, and me being able to give them advice as if I was actually there.
Hmm. So did it feel like you were actually there? I mean, you were 60 miles away, right?
Right. Yep. I was down in Middletown, Connecticut, and Smith College is in Northampton, Massachusetts, number one small liberal arts town in America. Um, yeah, honestly, I didn't feel that it was any different. The only thing that would be different from usual coaching, as if I'd been on the spot, was that my coaching and observation was a lot more focused because I could only see one court at a time. It allowed me to focus just on that match in front of me. Um, so it worked out very well. And then our court viewing situation isn't ideal. The wall behind the courts, well behind the courts, where the bench is located, is quite close. So although I couldn't actually see the entire court, I could see most of the court, and certainly enough to, since I know my players quite well, certainly enough to observe what was going on very rapidly, assess what was going on,
So
and
you would observe them, and then you would send them chat notes, or
well, actually, what I would do is I could hear very well as well. So we were trying out a new scoring format, which has just been approved by the World Squash Federation, to 11 points, point of rally scoring. So when I would hear that the game was nearing the end, so around, let's say, a score of maybe 8-7, so now I know there's maybe 5 or 6 points left. What I, as I'm watching the match, I'm taking notes with a pen and paper. With 4 or 5 points to go, what I would do is I would type out in chat. I would type out 1. You need to recover to the center of the court more quickly. 2, you need to watch out when your opponent's in this position. They're playing this shot. 3, you need to do this. So I would type it out on the chat. So when they approached, they would actually get the information, or they could get the information from me in 2 different ways. Auditorily, they could listen to what I would say to them, but also visually, they could actually read the actual notes in front of them using the chat function.
were they able to see you as I can see you with video, or no?
Yes, definitely. And that was the other great thing. My last practice was more than 2 weeks ago. So the entire team, as they're walking back and forth behind the courts to their matches, would just stop by and have a chat with me. How's your ankle doing? Hey Tim, how are you? How's your hip? And I would say, when are you playing next? So it was a great way, and actually I could hear different conversations. So it was a great way to stay in touch with them as well.
Have you heard of any other coaches doing anything similar to this?
No, I haven't. On my own blog, I have a Science of Coaching squash.wordpress.com blog. I put up a couple of posts about using Web 2.0 technology. But I would say that in general, I have not heard of this before. Although this idea of way back in 1988, I was a mental training consultant for the Canadian national racquetball team.
You sound like a Canadian, huh?
A little bit. The A's are not. I suppressed the A's, but we ran like I guess it's all wrapped, distance education. We ran a remote mental training program. We trained the national coaches and some of the assistant coaches to implement a mental training program through phone calls and through email. This was way back in '98. So that idea of coaching from a distance isn't new, but I've actually never heard of anyone, at least in the squash coaching community, using Skype to coach up their team.
Hmm. So this would have potential in other sports as well, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Like
And then
I mean, tennis would be obvious.
yeah, and in my my post, I alluded to squash is not quite as rich a sport as tennis. So, for example, if you're top 20 in the world on a men's or women's tour, you might only be making 70 or 80,000 a year, but you might still be playing 20 or 30 events around the world, and that would make it often it's difficult to hire a coach to come with you. But squash is absolutely ideal. Um, most of the coaches, most of the kids on the tour do Skype or do some sort of chat and do a lot of email. So there's no reason why they couldn't place their laptop on a spare chair overlooking the court, and in between games, and have their coach them up from a distance, and that could, because it's expensive. It would probably cost $5,000 per event to bring your coach with you. Once you take into account flights and hotels um,
Hmm.
it just isn't possible.
So it's good for the athletes and good for the sports, but it makes it more difficult for somebody like you to make a living, huh?
Yeah, except
Although look at this, you're laid up now and you can do it.
yeah. I'm lucky enough to have a salaried position, so and actually you have a lot of international top players. John White, world number one, just a couple of years ago, just got hired down at FNM down in Pennsylvania to coach squash. So there are actually very few. There are not that many coaches that actually coach tour players on a full-time basis. Most people already have a secondary job. Um, they coach in a club, which often makes it impossible to accompany their player. And Skype is a great way for them to stay with their player on the tour.
Any other sports come to mind where this might work?
Well, any of the racket sports, just because of the proximity, placing the laptop or a camera right next to the court, and then the player, only a couple of steps away from going over to that. That would be ideal. Obviously, sports like bowling, um, bowling come to mind. Uh, it could even be done. It could even be done. For example, I own a couple of camcorders. One of the camcorders that I have, I think I've never actually done it, but I think can be set up to to be used with Skype. I mean, obviously, any sport with a bench, so even a hockey game, or a soccer game, or a basketball game. Uh, I think there's definite potential for just put the laptop on a little stand. You can, if the play's down on one end, you can always just simply shift the laptop. Uh, no big deal. I mean,
Hmm.
the real advantage is the low techness of it. Everyone can open a Skype account in a couple of seconds. Uh, you know, Instruction is minimal. Uh, so it's just the whole low tech aspect of it just makes it so much more accessible.